A second day of talks in Doha over a potential Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal have now ended. CNN is told that technical teams will continue to meet in the coming days until the main principals meet again in Cairo next week. This comes as the Israeli military orders evacuations from parts of the so-called humanitarian zone in southern Gaza. Israel says that it has intelligence that terrorist activity is taking place there. Since October of last year, more than 80% of the Gaza Strip has been subjected to evacuation orders. That's according to the UN's humanitarian agency. Meanwhile, a Palestinian village in the occupied West Bank has come under attack by armed Israeli settlers. Nick Robertson is tracking this story for us.
Well, the car behind was set on fire as the settlers came into this hilltop village. The man who owns the car, talking to him, his face is smashed up. He said he tried to confront the settlers as they came in. He described a scenario that they haven't witnessed in this particular village for a long time. And he said never before, in fact, had they ever seen armed settlers coming in, firing live rounds, firing tear gas. And when we arrived in the town here a little earlier on in the day, we were witness to the funeral cortege of Rashid Seda, a 23-year-old young man who was shot dead by the settlers. There was a lot of anger in that cortege at the settlers, at the Israeli government, a lot of pain being felt. This was a young man of the village. He was being carried at shoulder height, wrapped in a Palestinian flag, young men carrying him, older men watching from the sides. And at the funeral service in the graveyard, a little after, the oration there was absolutely powerful and very clear in its message that the people of this village don't feel safe, that they believe that the settlers were acting with the support of the Israeli government. They don't feel in this village protected by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. In fact, they allege that the Israeli Defense Force was protecting the settlers. Now, the IDF did stop a second attack overnight getting into this village. The IDF and the Israeli police are investigating the incident so far. And we've heard condemnation coming from the U.S. Ambassador Jack Lew saying it's absolutely appalled by this and these attacks must stop. The Defense Minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, has put his condemnation out as well, calling it radical violence that does not, he said, does not stand up to the values of the State of Israel. Israel's Interior Minister has condemned it as well, calling it violent nationalist riots. Those were his words. So the condemnation coming from Israeli officials, even from right-wing leaders like Itamar Ben-Gvir, although he did say that the Israeli Defense Force should do more to protect the settlers, and Israel is from the stone throwers whom he calls terrorists in these villages. That's his allegation. But he did say that this is absolutely unacceptable. So this is strong condemnation coming from Israeli officials, but it just doesn't cut through in these villages. People here don't feel safe, and I think irrespective of what they hear from the Israeli government, they will continue to believe that events like last night, the settlers coming in armed in the village when no one was expecting, killing a young man, injuring others, they think these are coordinated by the government. They're in cahoots together. This is deeply divisive, particularly at the time when these very sensitive talks in Doha about the future of Gaza are going on. Nick Robertson, CNN, JIT, in the occupied West Bank.
All right, joining us now from Washington, D.C. is our chief national security correspondent, Alex Marquardt. Alex, good to see you. Let's circle back to the ceasefire talks. I mean, what more do we know about how these talks ended and also what progress was made, if any?
Well, they ended on a positive note, and the fact that we know that more meetings are going to be happening in the coming days, that is positive. But by no means are we on the cusp of any kind of imminent deal, Rahel. That is important. These main mediators, so the heads of intelligence for Egypt and the U.S., as well as the Qatari Prime Minister, they went into these talks with the Israelis, with Hamas, trying to bridge some pretty significant gaps. And what we heard today from those three mediating countries in a joint statement was that they made progress by putting forward what they're calling a bridging proposal, essentially a document that takes all of the outstanding issues and tries to bring the two sides closer together in terms of how those issues will not only be solved, but how they will be implemented. So what we're told is that in the coming days, now that these main talks are over in Doha, At a lower level, experts on what are called technical teams will get together to essentially cross the T's, dot the I's, and really work towards a final agreement. And then towards the end of next week, the main players again will get back together in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. So we're talking about the CIA director, Bill Burns, the Egyptian intelligence director, Abbas Kamal, the Qatari prime minister, the Israeli head of the Mossad intelligence agency, and Hamas. And so these are encouraging signs, but no one that I've spoken to, Rahel, is ready to say that this is certainly something that is going to happen. I want to read you part of the joint statement that was released just a short time ago from the three mediating countries. It says, "It is time to release the hostages and detainees, begin the ceasefire, and implement this agreement. The path is now set for that outcome, saving lives, bringing relief to the people of Gaza, and de-escalating regional tensions." One more note, Rahel. This comes as the prospect of a major strike or major strikes from Hezbollah and Iran could happen against Israel, retaliatory strikes. And so what the ceasefire talks, those involved are hoping to accomplish is essentially to push those potential strikes away, to keep them at bay. And in fact, the Qatari prime minister has reached out to the Iranian foreign minister not once but twice in the past 2 days to keep him abreast of the talks and to say that essentially that they need to give these ceasefire discussions a chance and that any kind of escalatory action, a major strike, could derail the prospect for peace in Gaza. Rahel?
And Alex, I mean, to that end, Israel is saying and telling its counterparts in the UK and France that it expects their nations, the UK and France, to attack Iran if Iran strikes Israel. One, I mean, where do those nations stand on that? But also, where's the US stand on this?
Well, the U.S. is essentially helping coordinate that effort. And let's remind our viewers why we expect this to happen. Several weeks ago, there were a pair of strikes that Israel is either publicly behind or is believed to have been behind. One was against a major figure in the Hezbollah militant group in Lebanon, Fouad Shakar. He was killed in an airstrike in southern Beirut by Israel. The next day, there was an operation that took out the top political leader for Hamas in the Iranian capital. Israel did not admit that they carried that out, but it is widely believed that they did. And so now we're in a situation where it is believed that Hezbollah and or Iran could respond. Now, it's been several weeks, so we've been waiting to see every single day whether this is going to happen. In the meantime, the U.S. has been assuring Israel that it will come to its defense. It is expected that the Brits and the French would also help in that defense. And the major reasons are, Rahel, not just because they want to protect Israel, but if there were major damage and a lot of deaths in Israel as a result of those strikes, we could expect the situation to really escalate and potentially spiral out of control. So the U.S. And potentially with the Brits and the French are really trying to avoid that scenario. But right now we are waiting and seeing whether Hezbollah and Iran could carry out those kinds of strikes. Rahel.
We continue to watch. Alex Marquardt, thank you for your reporting.